When you first think of an instrument, something goes into your mind. And what is that? It may be a violin, it may be a piano, it may be a trumpet. But what is the instrument that has all of the notes laid out for you? That's definitely the piano. How many keys does this piano have? 88 keys. And that's a big range for a piano, for an instrument. And it goes from all the way down here, from the low A, all the way up to the high C. And of course, in the modern days, now there are more piano manufacturers such as Fazioli and a Bosendorfer. Those have extended keys and even an extra pedal. But just for your standard instrument, any piano that is an acoustic piano usually has 88 keys and it has a huge range. That range can only be done by a keyboard instrument. And the reason why I say keyboard instrument, because there are other instruments such as a harpsichord or even an organ. Those two are the most popular ones in addition to the piano today. Of course, we can't forget the clavichord or the forte piano, which is the predecessor of the modern piano today. So what makes the piano so easy to learn? As I mentioned before, it has all 88 keys. And if you already know your musical alphabet, it's pretty easy as well to just copy and paste. Although the different ranges on the piano, there are, as we discussed in my previous videos, where I taught you the black keys, there's only sets of 3s and sets of 2s all over the piano, and they repeat. So let's just review C, D, E, F, G, A, B. So you have 7 musical alphabet letters in total. There's nothing else. Simple as that. And once you learn it all just in one octave of the piano, let's just say from C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So that's a full octave, which means it's 8 notes in total, but you repeat the C. And in that case, if you just copy, paste, it goes all over the piano, which means you've learned the entire piano, just learning the 7 musical alphabet. You may wonder, oh, what about a guitar? So many people play guitar. Yes, playing guitar can be easy. However, you cannot instantly just press a note on the string and it comes out as C. There's different types of frets you have to remember. String instruments such as a violin, cello, viola, those are also difficult. Not only you have to execute and press it correctly on the string, you also have a bow. And to execute the sound is not very easy as pressing a key on the piano and a wonderful sound comes out. Even if you just press one note on the piano, it's a great intonation. But on a string instrument, you need to have vibrato and also the way that you strike with your bow. Now, I'm not a string player. However, when I work with string players, it's much more difficult and they always have to tune their instruments to whatever instruments they are playing with. For the piano, you can't tune unless you are trained and qualified as a piano technician, because there are 3 strings or 2 strings or even 1 string on the back. So up here, there's going to be 3 strings. In the middle register, it's still 3, but as you're heading down, it becomes thicker. The bass gets thicker, right? It's a bigger sound, a deeper sound compared to these. So in the back, it requires a lot more strength and the steel strings to be much more wired so that it can create such a big sound. So as we're talking about the easy capabilities of learning the piano, and the black keys, those are just sharps and flats. That's a little bit more advanced if you're starting out, but flats are just a half step lower and sharps are a half step higher. So that's what the black keys are for most cases. However, there's always exceptions. Now, as we get into the harder part, why is it hard to master? Well, first of all, you gotta play with 2 hands. You've got 2 hands, you've got a big range here. And to play with 1 hand, I mean, sure, you can do that, but why not make use of two hands. So, for other instruments such as the violin, the trumpet, the oboe, it's not easy to make two sounds at once. A trumpet, maybe maximum, you can do an overtone, but that's the maximum they can do. They can't play 5 notes at a time. 5 fingers we have on one hand, the 5 fingers we have on the other hand. You can make different combinations with our fingers, but other instruments, they're primarily a melodic line or even a harmony line. Like for double bass, for example, when you see them pluck the strings, ding, 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 ding. Sure, they can do 2 at a time, but there's no way they can play an entire C major chord. And that's the problem when you start to read music. So what I have here is a first book of Mozart. And this is for the beginning pianist. You have to learn clefs. So, for example, a treble clef right here and a bass clef. And just like a language, these two are basically musical languages for musicians. And most instruments, they only have one staff. And that's easier to read because it's just one at a time and they're more adept to playing 1 or 2 notes at the same time. But for pianists, if you look at this, these are not read the same. And if you're doing treble and bass clef, basically you're dividing your brain into 2 segments. One side has to read the treble clef, the other side has to read the bass clef. Another thing, not just for note reading, but also rhythm. So if you have one line, it's much easier to have clear rhythm and you can count in your head. But as I was growing up, a lot of my own students, they have trouble reading because it's like you really are dividing your brain into 2. So for example, here is an 1/8 note to a 1/4 note. However, this is 1/4 note to a 1/4 note. So when you look at this, it's not that very simple. You have to play this a little bit faster. Da-dum. And then this is da-da. But when you play it, it's not so simple as it looks on the page. And this is when students become frustrated because it looks right on the page. They think they're doing it, but when they execute it on the piano, it doesn't sound like what they actually had in their mind. The piano is just like an overall instrument, meaning it's orchestral and it could be played solo. Other instruments can play solo as well. However, in most cases, it sounds better with the piano. So like violin, you cannot just have an entire concert with violin solo. It is possible, however, it doesn't sound as nice as playing with a piano. Violin sonatas, they're meant to be played with a piano. Those are in special circumstance because piano and violin can be partners, really, and they share the same responsibilities. But let's just say singer. Now, singer is the main role, correct? And usually when it's a singer and a piano, the piano is just supporting, accompanying the singer. In this case, if you're playing the piano, in most cases, when you have a melodic line, a lyrical singing line, your right hand is the singing hand and your left hand is more of a support accompanying hand. So this part is actually difficult to master because, as I said before, you have to divide the brain into 2 and also control the hands differently. So if, let's say, you have a very majestic lyrical line you're trying to sing with your fingers, your right hand, of course, is a lot more dominant and a lot more stronger than your left hand. However, if you're just starting out, the control is a lot harder because you want to play the same thing. So if you're playing, most people would say, and when you hear that, it's like, oh, what am I hearing? I can't hear it very clearly. But if you were to play, now I can hear a little bit more of the right hand, a little bit more of the melodic line. And that is what is really hard to control in the beginning because you're not used to it. And in many cases, including myself, when I first started, it's not very easy because, especially on a acoustic piano. And the reason why I say acoustic is because electric pianos, some of them are weighted keys, which means they have some resistance. So if I play this really loud, soft, it makes a difference. But in some cases, for keyboards, electric keyboards, they don't have any resistance at all, so whatever you press is just loud. In that case, this type of training would not work on a non-weighted keyboard. I hope you guys learned a little bit more about why the piano is a bit easier to learn and not easy to master. Hope you guys enjoy that. Follow us on Pianolin TV on our platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, Instagram, TikTok, all of our podcast platforms. videos. We always have them on Thursdays, and our teaching series are Tuesdays with Jeremy and Saturdays with me. If you like these and you're learning a lot, come follow us, subscribe. We're gonna have great content for you, and we're so happy to share our knowledge with you. Take care and happy practicing.